A very special person, obviously. All these tributes that have come in and stressed his grace and his dignity. But he was also tough. I mean, he was resilient. He lost elections and came back. He made very difficult decisions, and he made them aggressively. He didn't back down from them. So he was a very strong individual, as well as just having a unique niceness about him that you couldn't help but like.
You know, I was thinking about you last night, Judd, and just thinking about how you have also brought a lot of that same civility. And I just wonder what lessons you learned from him along the way.
Well, from him, he and my father, to be very honest with you, they were of the same. They both went to Yale. They were both CIA people. They were both in politics. But they had a dignity about them. They didn't demand that you acknowledge them as being special. In fact, just the opposite. If you did that, they would just poo-poo it. And they just wanted to do a job of serving people. Service was what it was all about, and they loved it. I mean, President Bush just really enjoyed politics and the game, so to say, of getting elected and doing good things for people. He was an enthusiast about making America a better place, and of course he was so good at describing America as the best place.
In his presidential campaign, he stayed at your home, didn't he? When he was there?
He actually, when he was still an asterisk in 1979, 1978, he and Barbara Bush lived with my parents at their house in Nashua, New Hampshire. And every morning he would get up, and my father would get up, and they'd get in my father's station wagon, the two of them. And they would drive around the state. They'd go to Rotary meetings. And I think Mrs. Bush probably was in most of the kitchens in New Hampshire. She was at the time doing some sort of, I don't know, some sort of handiwork on a rug or something she was making. And they were just down-to-earth people, and he was willing to go anywhere, do anything, and meet anyone to get the message out that he thought he could do a real good job as president, and it was successful. He went from being an asterisk to being the competition for Ronald Reagan, and then he went on to be vice president, and then he went on to be president.
Senator, you mentioned it was not a straight shot up. He definitely had setbacks, as just about every politician does along the way. Maybe the most difficult of those was after saying, "Read my lips, no new taxes." What did that mean for his bid for a second presidential term?
Well, it cost him the presidency. There's no question about it. You had a movement within the conservative, really hardcore conservatives of the Republican Party, led by Pat Buchanan, who took him on in the primaries and who ran very well in New Hampshire. And then you had Ross Perot come into the race as a populist, anti-Washington establishment candidate. And if Ross Perot hadn't run, George Bush would have been reelected. It was that simple. And the only reason Ross Perot had the energy or received the energy to run was because of the break in the Republican Party, which was caused by the Read My Lips situation, where unfortunately he got terrible staff advice, in my opinion. They had that meeting out at Andrews Air Force Base with John Sununu and his other fellow who was his top aide, and Bob Byrd, and they cut a deal where they raised taxes, and somebody should have said to the president, "This isn't what we were going to do. We shouldn't do this." And unfortunately, somebody said, "Go ahead and do it." And as a result, he lost the confidence of a certain segment of the party, and that led to Ross Perot getting in the race, and that led to his defeat.
Senator, what do you think his legacy will be?
Well, it's going to be a lot of things. On the substantive side, it's going to be that he fought a war and fought it, as Dick Cheney said, or maybe it was Jim Baker, the way it should be fought. He went in, he won it, and he got out. And that he brought about a transition from the Soviet Union, which you have to understand was the evil empire, and brought that transition to a Russia, where it was reestablished as a democracy. And he did it without conflict, and he did it in a way that maintained the respect for the Russian people, which was very important. On a personal note, I think he defined how you should be an elected official. You know, be gracious, be decent, understand that you've got enemies, but don't treat them in a vicious way, and move on to the next issue. If you lose one, move on to the next one.